All right, we're back with the latest episode of Right Now It's Like This. It matches my tattoo, by the way. This is where the whole name came from. And just wrapped up number 9, which was a fun one. I got to thank everybody at EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization chapter here in Albany, specifically Jeff Bennett at Direct Advisors. He is the incoming supreme overlord for our chapter in the coming year, and excited to work more closely with Jeff going forward. And it was just kind of a crazy idea I had when we were out in Buffalo for our annual Nerve conference and listening to some amazing speakers that I had seen over the course of this event. And I said to Jeff on the second day, I said, Jeff, how about we do our own podcast? Sure, sounds great. What are you going to do? What's the plan? I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And you know what? We're 9 episodes in, wrapping up season 1 here today. And it's been a lot of fun, a lot of opportunities to learn stuff. It started back in September, end of September, where we talked to Allie Mooney, who was one of our guest speakers for our EO Albany chapter. We talked to different members of EO. We talked to my friend Nicole Snow, who has darn good yarn. We talked with Andy Heck, the owner of Alpenhaus, with multiple locations and just an amazing business there. Talked with a few of my friends who've done amazing entrepreneurial work on their own, helping the community. My friend Drew Jacobs and Dr. John Cooper, the regional manager and star programming guy for PIX 106 here in Albany. And it's been a lot of fun. We wrapped up last week with a segment on meditation. So if you'd ever thought about trying to meditate, and it's hard, trying to slow the mind down is not the easiest thing that I have ever done in my life, but I've gotten much better at it, where I can slow it down and things are a little bit easier. And what a great thing we picked up. And Leonard Perlmutter last week was just amazing. So if you haven't checked out that one, please do. And this week, this is another one of those EO treats. We bring in these great speakers to town for our learning events for our members and for guests. And this week, we have in Harry Markopolos. And I'm saying Markopolos, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, and Jeff is going to sit there and he's going to shake his head and he's going to give me another face palm. I just can't say it right. I don't know what's the matter with me. Maybe I'm having a seizure. I don't know. But Harry is amazing. Harry is the whistleblower who tracked down all of the Bernie Madoff stock scandal stuff from 10 years ago. And the real interesting thing about it was next Tuesday, the 11th, is the 10th anniversary of Bernie Madoff being taken off to jail. So it made for a nice bookend. As a matter of fact, the Wall Street Journal was up to take pictures of Harry for an article next week. And Harry's a really interesting guy, and I wasn't sure how our conversation was going to go because I hadn't met him before. We talked just briefly beforehand. So some of the financial stuff, I'm not so goodly with the numbers, so you have to forgive me for some of it. Harry's very smart with the numbers, and he pieced all of this through, and he does this now for a living. He's a true entrepreneur, and I'm thrilled to have Harry on the program, and his book is out. It's been out for a while. Pick it up. It's a great read. So right now it's like this. Let's get into Harry Markopolos. You get to be the last episode of our first season of our EO podcast here. Right now it's like this. We're hanging out with Harry Markopolos, the man who is the whistleblower behind catching Bernie Madoff. And then, from what I understand, is today the 10th anniversary? Or it's
coming up on the 11th, just a few days.
Just a few days. Now, I got done reading the book, and there was a couple of things right at the beginning that kind of lured me in and kind of hooked me. You tell a story right at the beginning of the book, because Bernie Madoff did a lot of damage to folks. And there was the story of the gentleman on the airplane who saw the story on the in-flight TV, and he said to the flight attendant, I want to get out. Well, we can't do that. It doesn't matter. I'll just close the door behind me. It was essentially what happened. And we were just talking beforehand. You're a Jets fan, and obviously I'm a Mets fan too, and this affected lots of people, including the owners of the Mets. Tell me a little bit about the folks that got hurt in all of this.
There were people that suddenly overnight, probably around 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a cold, snowy, icy, rainy night in New England and New York, that went from literally riches to rags in the blink of an eye. And they lost everything that they had thought they had saved for retirement and that were investing for the future. And so they didn't have a good future at that moment in time. And so the gentleman on the plane who I've actually met, I met him on the beach.
So he didn't get out.
No, he tried to commit suicide. He tried to jump off a moving JetBlue plane. And the flight crew restrained him, put him back in his seat. And I asked him why he tried to do that. And he told me, well, I thought I had no future. I wasn't thinking clearly. It was very emotional. And my wife was sitting next to me, and I'm trying to jump out of this plane. And after a few days, I thought about it, and I downsized. I'm a partner at a big firm in New York. I make enough money. I have a nice place on Fire Island. I have a nice apartment in Manhattan. So what I did is we sold the house on Long Island for our cash needs to rebuild our retirement. And I had to tell our kids that I've given you a great education. I've sent you to graduate school. I've given you opportunity. Seize the moment. That's all I can give you. You're not going to have any inheritance now. Madoff took that. And I'm saving for Mom and I for our retirement. And he's fine. He came to peace to himself. And this was probably 2 years later that I met him. He was a friend of my co-author, David Fisher.
So, one, thanks for doing this. This is our Entrepreneurs Organization Albany chapter, and loaded with people who are growing and trying to make themselves better and their businesses better. And you started, your dad was a bit of an entrepreneur. He had a few restaurants and bars and Arthur Treacher's too, correct?
Yes, and that's a Greek trait. We're big into the restaurants, shipping, furriers, and dry cleaners, and bridge painting. And those are our key sectors of the economy that we focus on. Unfortunately, the entrepreneurs gave birth to another generation, and they sent their children to professional schools. And unfortunately now they're becoming doctors, dentists, and lawyers. Oh God, lawyers. And it's a disappointment because
Suit wearers, Harry.
Suit wearers, hourlies, people that aren't as entrepreneurial as the traditional Greek businesses. And so that's sort of sad. People don't want to work hard anymore. As entrepreneurs, they work very hard. People want to do 9 to 5 corporate work, Monday through Friday, and entrepreneurs don't do that.
It goes all day and night, doesn't it?
There's no boundary between work and play. All too often, you end up taking the work home and working from home to all hours.
So your first job in the financial realm was with the Arthur Treachers, with a few of the stores, wasn't that as comptroller, I believe?
Assistant controller.
Assistant.
And I got to learn how to construct an income statement, balance sheet, how to do depreciation schedules, how to file taxes, payroll taxes, do quarterly estimated, federal, state taxes. We also had to do sales tax. So I became very familiar, and I was pretty good at tax accounting. I took several courses in it, as well as accounting. And it gives you a feel for the numbers in a business. And I also got to manage restaurants and be a district manager. And so the accounting is more the back end, keeping score.
Mm-hmm.
But scoring the points is what you do on the front end, customer facing, bringing in the revenues. And so I've done both, and it helps to do A to Z, I think, if you're an entrepreneur. Get into the front of the house and the back.
And as comptroller, you found a lot of waste. Was that your first glimpse of it?
It was mainly fraud. If it was in a restaurant, there's a narrow difference between waste and fraud.
Okay.
If you don't have enough waste, then you're serving stale product, something that was pre-cooked, past its holding time. It's not going to be tasty to the customer, and you could lose that customer by giving them a bad meal, a bad experience. And so you wanted to have waste. But if you had too much waste, then you had to investigate for fraud. And there was ways to do that in a fast food environment. Anything that's valuable will sprout legs and walk out the back door during break, shift change, or at the close. And it walks into people's trunk. It could be your shrimp, your fish, but usually it was the shrimp and the chicken. No one ever stole fish. Why would you? They stink in your trunk, right? Your car would smell. And so once you spotted the trend that was well above where the waste should be, then you started investigating for fraud, and you would do the inventories every shift change. And you would isolate the employees who worked for each shift. And within a week or two, through a process of elimination, you knew who was stealing. Now, the police aren't going to investigate someone stealing a case of shrimp or chicken. The dollar limits are too low for a detective to investigate. So what we would do is we would just cut the hours of that person until they voluntarily quit. That way we'd have to pay them unemployment. And that was a workable solution for our family's business, because we had 12 Arthur Treatures, we also had a Popeyes, and we didn't want to have the unemployment claims because it would drive up your cost of unemployment insurance, make your business less profitable.
So always better when someone quits.
Yes.
After that initial experience in the 90s, you were working at Rampant Investment Management.
We called it Rampart, not Rampant.
Rampart?
Rampart. Yes,
I can't read my handwriting then. So you got it full on into the financial end at that point.
Yes. I went up there as a portfolio manager for equity derivatives, and we were trading many billions of derivatives every quarter. Throughout the year, we'd be trading those. It was a modest-sized firm, anywhere between 2 to 10 billion at any one point in time. It was a well-run firm, well-regarded in the industry, and I enjoyed working there. I stayed there for almost 13 years.
Now, that's when you first came across the name Bernie Madoff, isn't it?
Actually, no. I saw him when my first trip into finance was at Makefield Securities. My dad bought a quarter interest in a brokerage firm right outside of Philly. And we used to trade over-the-counter stocks on NASDAQ. And I knew Madoff as an over-the-counter market maker. I used to trade with the Madoff firm all the time as a counterparty on the other side of my firm's trades.
Okay.
So they were well respected. They were trading 5 to 10% of the daily stock exchange volume in the United States, so they were well regarded. And then everybody who was anybody had to trade through Madoff.
But it was at Rampart that you became aware that something wasn't quite right, though.
Yes, we knew him as an over-the-counter market maker. No one knew him as a hedge fund manager, and that was the shock to me. Because here's somebody who was running, in effect, what was the largest hedge fund in the world, yet no one knew he was the largest hedge fund in the world except for me and my team, because we investigated, and he was bigger than anybody else.
What caused you to investigate that?
Well, his returns. His returns were clearly smoke and mirrors. His returns were, on average, gross returns of 16% a year. He was delivering 12% net to the investors. The 4% difference, that was the marketing spread. And he was giving over 90% of the profits to the feeder funds that sold clients into his hedge fund. No one pays 90% profit margin to marketing. You'd pay 15, you might pay 50 if it was Merrill Lynch or somebody big that could bring you a lot of assets to manage, but no one would pay 90. So Bernie's doing all the heavy lifting, and he's giving the majority of the pie on the fees to others. He was overpaying, and the people receiving the overpayments never asked why. As long as the check cleared, they were happy.
And who were these people that were receiving those payments?
The big banks mainly. It's the largest banks on the planet.
So you just kind of turned and looked away?
Banks pretend to do due diligence, but they really don't. What they do is they look at their bonus payments, and whatever's bringing in money gets them paid at the end of the year, and they don't look any further than that. So they have compliance people because they've gotten in so much trouble with the regulators and the Department of Justice, and so that's mandated. But they're there as a shield to say that we have compliance and we have procedures, but they don't really follow those. They don't let anything get in the way of the bottom line. That's why we call them banksters.
Now, you see all this, you see these numbers, and you're saying to yourself, something's wrong in Denmark. So what do you do at that point? What are your choices?
Well, I could look the other way. I would say that thousands of people saw that Madoff was suspicious. They looked the other way, walked in the other direction, and said nothing to anybody, except maybe some close friends, but they never told the authorities. I didn't believe in that. I knew he was too big and would cause great harm to our financial system and the reputation of our capital markets, and so I kept turning him into the Securities and Exchange Commission.
And they said to you, don't call us?
Yeah, don't call us, we'll call you. It was pretty clear they didn't understand derivatives. But they're lawyers, and they didn't have derivatives people on their staff because they didn't pay enough. And derivatives people aren't going to work for the SEC because it's not a career track. The place is run by lawyers for lawyers. They can't count. That's why they went to law school. They couldn't pass the GMATs and get into a business school.
So you see all this stuff and you decide to step out from, I'm assuming, which was a very good job and making enough money down on Wall Street, but you decide to step out, and that came with all different set of challenges and lists of enemies, I would presume.
After doing the Madoff case and being a derivatives professional, I had good math skills and I had really good accounting skills from my work in the restaurants. And I saw so much fraud on Wall Street, and I said, I knew there was more opportunity on the other side of Wall Street, bringing fraud cases against them for cheating investors. No one had done it before, so I was creating a new field, and so that's what I did. And I also did healthcare fraud cases, because the government did pay 15 to 30% rewards for healthcare fraud against Medicare and Medicaid.
So when I was reading your book, so you had the challenges of the SEC, who didn't seem to be interested. You had personal concerns about just starting your car in the morning, because some of the folks that were part of this on the receiving end of the Madoff thing that perceived that they were making money were mobsters and drug cartels.
Yes, that was, Bernie was zeroing out the Russian mob and the Latin American drug cartels. And if they had caught him, well, they have a unique and special way to terminate investment managers who cheat them. And so he had a lot of risk on the table. And so when I talked to the FBI after the case was over, the lead case agent, special agent in charge, Keith Kelly, he told me, Harry, you know how lucky you were to survive in this case? A lot of people have gotten killed for a lot less money than that was in this case. And it was those people. In fact, after the news broke, I did get calls from the Russians and the Colombians, and the Russians were very nice and gentlemanly. The cartels were not. They were very cold and I would say mean. And basically what they wanted to know was how to find the people that sold them in to Madoff so they could confront them personally. And I sort of knew what they were going to do to those people when they caught them. And I also helped the government, the Department of Justice. I actually helped the Treasury Department in the Madoff criminal case against J.P. Morgan. The bank copped a guilty plea, paid $2.6 billion in criminal fines. And I think it was January or February of 2014 or 15. And I helped the government calculate damages on that case because J.P. Morgan was co-investing with the Colombian drug cartels through a Swiss-based feeder fund named Aurelius Finance. And they knew it was Colombians. And the Colombians threatened to kill the J.P. Morgan bankers if they pulled out. And that's in the public record. It's in the Department of Justice criminal complaint against J.P. Morgan.
So you've got all these obvious enemies, I'd say, but you weren't getting any help from the media. The Wall Street Journal didn't cover this.
We went to the Wall Street Journal. We went to the New York Times. And they wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. It was too big to be believed. And there were so many prestigious people and institutions investing in Madoff. All the big banks, well, most of the big banks. Goldman didn't invest in Madoff, but other banks did. You had Merrill accounts in there. You certainly had the big European banks, Deutsche Bank, Dresdner Bank, two biggest banks in Germany, the two biggest banks in France. Sorry, all four big banks in France were in there, the two biggest banks in Spain, Banco Santander, BBVA, the big Swiss banks were in there. In fact, the Swiss were huge in the Madoff, second only to America as far as a country that invested in Madoff. So UBS, Credit Suisse, big banks, Switzerland in there. So he really had fooled the Europeans, and he had a few Asian banks, but not as many. He was bigger in Europe, actually, than he was in North America.
So what Madoff was doing was a Ponzi scheme. So how did that work in reality? Was he shifting money to cover losses along the way? Is that my understanding?
Basically, you're stealing from new investors to pay old investors their money. So you're just reshuffling the money through your bank account. And Bernie's bank account was J.P. Morgan. And they were aiding and abetting, looking the other way, letting billions pile up in a non-interest-bearing checking account and never asked a single question. They had all these anti-money laundering compliance checks, but they never did because the account was so profitable. They made billions on that account.
Do they have any responsibility in this?
Yes, they paid $2.6 billion in criminal fines and copped a guilty plea.
And all the folks that were involved, that many of them lost pretty much everything, like this guy on the plane who lost his entire retirement and had to really start over.
It depends on how you got in. So let's say you came in through a large European bank that made representations and warranties that we do great due diligence and we manage your money. Well, for every euro those people put in, those banks usually paid a euro back. They wouldn't give you the fake returns that Madoff pretended to earn, but you got your initial money back. Now, if you came in through a SIPC insured entity in the United States, you'll be getting your money back from the federal bankruptcy trustee. But here it is, almost 10 years later, he hasn't paid out yet. Why? Because those lawyers get paid by the hour. They're going to milk it for every last billable hour before they turn that money over. And then they're going to cry because that was their cash cow. And that's the way lawyers work. They're very parasitic.
So at the end of this,
Do you guys like lawyers, by the way?
I'd like to use my wife later on. By the way, they're charging $1,000 an hour. Or the card is $1,000 an hour, and they work on it 80 hours a week.
No, I heard they bill 36 hours a day, 8 days a week. 6 weeks a month.
You're probably 6 weeks. That's probably right.
and that's a slow month.
Yes.
So when you're done with this whole experience and he's goes off to serve his time, what happens to you? What happens to Harry? Besides writing a book, and it's a wonderful book, by the way, no one would listen.
Yeah, it sort of starts out slow and then tails off from there.
Yeah, and very modest.
And no humor in there at all.
No, none. There's nothing funny. So where do you go from this place?
I do other cases. I do a lot of Ponzi cases that are on the front pages. I just never take credit for them. I'm just tired of talking to the press. It infringes on my time. I'd rather do cases and put people away and put them in jail where they belong.
So you've continued on this path. You've taken this and
I've done some of the largest cases in the planet.
we wouldn't know.
No, well, you probably know about the currency cases I did against the custody banks, and that changed the foreign currency markets forever. No one ever used to measure their foreign currency price fills. So if you were a corporate client or you were a hedge fund or a mutual fund, you would trust your bank because they promise you best execution and straight through real-time processing, real-time. And what they would do is backdate the ticket to the worst price of the day. So if you were buying a currency, you got to pay the highs. And if you were selling, you got to pay the lows. And the banks called that best price, which it was for the bank. For you, worst price, and no one checked. But I checked.
What did this whole thing do to financial markets and how did this change things?
In the short term, everybody was afraid and got religion. And they wanted to check to see that the assets were there and that they understood the strategies. In the medium term, people forgot. And I would say here, 10 years later, no one knows anything. No one learns the lessons of history.
Just go on and keep making the same mistakes.
Look at Afghanistan and Iraq. Did we learn anything from Vietnam? Obviously not.
We all think we can do better. We all think we know better.
Yes. Did we learn anything?
Isn't that a human thing, though?
The Russian mess with the Trump administration. Did we learn anything from Watergate? There's a misdemeanor that takes place in Washington. Then we do the felony to cover it up. It makes no sense. No one learns anything.
Harry, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.